everybody. My name is Sarah Neary. I'm the social worker for independent living residents and assisted living residents.
I'm Jaclyn Craig. I'm the assisted living manager. I always just like to start by introducing myself with a little bit about how long I've been here. I started working at Oaknoll as a CNA in 2007 after I graduated high school. And then became a licensed practical nurse, and then a registered nurse, and then came into this position. So Sarah, Neary, and I have been talking about transitions throughout Oaknoll for quite some time now, and we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the transitioning period between independent living and to assisted living.
Yeah, so by now we've talked a little bit about the kind of services and amenities that are offered at the independent living level of care, and Jaclyn and I want to present the kinds of services and things that are available when it comes time to transition to assisted living. And I will say that most people don't pay attention to the offerings in assisted living until it's actually becoming clear to them or someone in their family that it may be time to consider a transition. So I think that's where we're going to start is what are the signs that would show you that it might be time to be thinking about moving to a higher level of care at Oaknoll. And we've got a whole list here, and I'll just kind of go through them quickly. Any changes in activities of daily living, those are the shorthand term for that is ADL. So activities of daily living have to do with all the things that help you get ready to go and greet your day. So getting up, getting dressed, getting groomed, getting from your bed to the bathroom. So if you're noticing any changes or difficulties with mobility, increased falls, balance issues that might be bothering you, dizziness, some people develop dizziness as their vision changes or their hearing changes, changes in bathing and grooming, and this may be something that you're not necessarily noticing, but maybe a family member or a caring neighbor or staff person might notice that you seem to be having more difficulty with just those activities of shaving or bathing, changing your clothes, keeping your clothing and your body fresh. Dressing may get a little bit more difficult, whether it's arthritis and trouble with buttons or zippers, whether it's bending over to put your shoes and socks on or lifting your arms up to put your shirt on overhead. Those are the things to be watching out for in terms of changes in your physical ability. Another thing to look at is managing medications. As people get older, they tend to collect a few medications for various chronic conditions. And at a certain point, organizing those and remembering when to take them and managing them, managing the reordering and keeping track of everything can become more and more difficult. So while we can provide a little bit of support for that in independent living, it's much more thorough and comprehensive in assisted living. And the last two, nutritional changes in appetite, weight loss, just either an inability or lack of desire to prepare meals in the way that you used to, or changes in appetite, sense of smell, sense of taste. And lastly, another activity of daily living or another aspect of daily living is managing continence. So it's not unusual for people as they get older to have some form of urinary or bowel incontinence. And there are people who live in every level of care at Oaknoll who have that issue. It's a matter of being able to manage it safely and healthfully. So when Again, it may not be you noticing, but when others are noticing that it's becoming more of an issue, then that would trigger a conversation about a possible move to assisted living. Another big one, and this has got its very own slide, is changes in cognitive function. And these have to do with memory loss, and confusion, limited attention span. Again, these are things that you might not necessarily notice in yourself. As a matter of fact, it's quite common that you wouldn't notice these things in yourself, but that others are noticing. Perceptual changes, not uncommon to have vision changes, hearing changes, changes or loss of smell and taste. So sometimes those can play into some of the other activities of daily living that you might be struggling with. A diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment or dementia, Parkinson's, any other progressive neurological condition you would be well advised to consider your future plans for care, because as progressive conditions, it would be important to have those supports in place in advance of needing their full scale. So some preparation would be useful. Also, change in organizational skills or sustaining attention. Sometimes people notice that managing their finances or organizing their mail or being able to do the taxes become more and more difficult, to the point of being almost debilitating or so anxiety producing that people just kind of freeze. So again, that's another sign to consider. And then any changes you or others might notice in your decision-making skills, especially in terms of judgment, safety awareness, things like that. So those are some examples of some of the cognitive changes that you might be noticing that would trigger a conversation about assisted living. And then we come to the idea of, well, who decides then? Who decides when it's time for a transition? And we like to include the resident, their family members, their physicians, as well as what we call here at Oaknoll our transition team, which is an interdisciplinary team of staff who have a lot of experience in recognizing the signs of an increased need for care, and then discussing and prioritizing people for those transitions. So Steve Rowe likes to say we don't necessarily move someone until everybody's on the same page. Depending on physical or cognitive status, that may or may not be true. That may or may not be a goal that we can fulfill. So there are rare occasions when we need to move someone in spite of how they might feel about it, but their family and their physicians realize that it's an essential transition. The good news is that we really like to have conversations well in advance of any of that type of a crisis mode. And the sort of slow cumulative changes that are most common as people get older allow for lots of opportunities to have those conversations. So, and it's one of the reasons you moved into Oaknoll, is that the whole spectrum of care is available to you when you need it. And we are here to help guide you in the knowing of when it's time and when you can really take advantage of the services that are available at each level of care. We kind of talk about a window of opportunity. So assisted living is an intermediate level of care. And so it's you're not completely on your own as you are in independent living. It's not the 24-hour skilled nursing care of our health center. So there's still a lot of independence that's required to be successful in assisted living. And so you may wait until your needs are so great that you actually miss the window of opportunity to not only qualify for assisted living, but to be successful there. So again, we really emphasize having those conversations early and often, and that's why we do this program pretty regularly. Again, contrasting that with an acute crisis that necessitates a quick decision in the heat of the moment, those aren't the ideal way to organize a transition, just because everybody's on high alert and their anxiety is high, and it's just not the best time. It happens and we respond as needed, but again, we would prefer to have those lots of conversations and lots of time to prepare for the change. And then the other thing that is included as a factor is the timing and the availability of apartments. So it may be that we are in an earlier stage of a conversation around transitioning, but an ideal apartment for your situation is available now and maybe won't be available in 6 months or whenever you feel like you would feel ready. So sometimes the timing and availability of apartments impacts the timing of the actual transition. And we've always found that better sooner rather than later. There's a quote that I share, which is, it's always too soon before it's too late. So it's always going to feel like you don't need it quite yet. But we would much rather err on that side of the equation than being well past the time of needing assisted living. So Jaclyn is now going to share the menu of services that are available in assisted living.
So as Sarah mentioned, once a resident is ready to transition and we have everything in place and agreed upon, we like to get the input from our residents, their family members, again, their physicians, and then from a lot of our independent living team members to kind of form together a service plan that would cater specifically to each resident's needs. So we value the input from all of those parties to put the service plan together. So I wanted to discuss some of the services that are available to our residents in assisted living. We do have 24-hour staffing. So we have a licensed nurse on first shift and second shift, which is first shift is 7 to 3, second shift is 3 to 11, and then our third shift is from 11 to 7. And on third shift, we just have one staff member overseeing our residents in the evenings for those who would need help with going to the bathroom or can't sleep or things like that. So the 24-hour staffing, emergency call pendant system. So everybody that moves into assisted living would have an emergency call pendant that they can notify staff 24 hours a day of their needs. Medication management, as Sarah went over, and as she discussed, it's more extensive. So if a resident needed medication 5 times a day, a nurse or a certified nursing aide would be able to administer those medications to you. We can help residents manage their own medications in their apartments, fill up a pill box. We help with ordering medications. So we really, if you would like us to, take over all aspects of medication management, which to a lot of residents is a big sigh of relief just to have somebody bring them their pills when they're due. So that's a great service and amenity. We also coordinate with your physician to manage your medical care, so that seems to be an endless job duty for us. We are always on the phone talking with residents' physicians to obtain orders and any of their requests that they need, schedule appointments, coordinate a companion to go to an appointment with you, which is at no added cost, as well as our transportation service that is also available at no added cost, which is a difference compared to independent living. We help residents, when Sarah mentioned earlier, with their activities of daily living, so that would include dressing, hygiene and grooming tasks, transfers and mobility to help a person get from one place to another, even if that would be with a wheelchair assistance throughout our building, bathing. So those essentially include your activities of daily living, simple meal prep, meal tray delivery service is the same, as it would be in independent living. You can also continue to order from any of the venues that you previously ordered from, so nothing changes with meal service. Some of the other things that we offer would be assisted living specific activities and wellness opportunities. And the staff are really good about going around and knocking on doors and providing reminders if that's something that would be helpful to you. We have a specific calendar for the assisted living residents. So like I said, exercises, chair yoga that Sarah does, coffee hours,
Programs, activities.
Yeah. Stephanie is our coordinator for assisted living, and all of our residents adore her. The other thing that we offer are laundry services. So EVS will do your laundry once a week in assisted living. We also talk very highly of our EVS department. A gentleman will wash it, dry it, fold it, bring it back to you, and put it away in your closet. So the residents really enjoy that service. We will also change out your bed linens every other week, and then EVS housekeeping services are offered weekly in assisted living rather than every other week as they are in independent living. We also have an assisted living grocery shopper, so they will go around to your apartment with a grocery menu and fill out things that you might need. They'll go out and do the grocery shopping for you, bring them back to assisted living, and then those items just get added onto your Oaknoll bill. So a lot of residents enjoy that service. And then also just trash removal, recycling removal, if that's something that you're needing assistance with. Let's see, specific wellness check-ins if you're just needing some extra checks for safety. I always talk about all of the specialists are still able to come down to assisted living. So hair, massage, nail technician therapy is still offered in assisted living. I think that's it. We'll also help residents cut their nails when they need it. So really what we do is we put together a service plan that's catered to your needs. But along with that, as we're talking about services, there are rules and regulations that govern assisted living. So that's a big piece of my job, to make sure that we are always in compliance with the rules and regulations per the DIA for the state of Iowa. So I do like to talk about some of the things that would initiate a transition for a resident to a higher level of care, which would be in the health center. So just kind of go through a little bit of the code for when somebody would be appropriate for a higher level of care than assisted living. So if somebody is bed bound and they're not able to get out of bed anymore, they would be more appropriate for a higher level of care. If somebody requires 2 persons to assist them, let's say moving from one chair to another or out of bed, so if it took 2 people to help you with that, you would be more appropriate for a higher level of care. If somebody is dangerous to themselves or to another tenant, that would put them at need for a higher level of care. If somebody requires part-time or intermittent health-related services, so that would entail, we don't encounter that one a whole lot, but part-time or intermittent health-related services. So if somebody needed IV antibiotics on a routine basis and that required a 24-hour registered nurse to manage that, that would be more appropriate for a higher level of care. Sarah mentioned incontinence in an earlier part of our discussion. So if somebody has unmanageable incontinence, that would just mean that despite the fact of intervention of somebody coming in and helping you out with those tasks, we still were not able to safely and healthily manage your incontinence. That person would be more appropriate for a higher level of care. Let's see. If someone needs assist of one person with more than 4 of those activities of daily living that I mentioned, they would be more appropriate for a higher level of care. And I think that is pretty much everything that encompasses the code of when somebody would be ready to transition. So we always have to mention that piece as well.
Yeah, so again, assisted living is an intermediate level of care with, a certain amount of services and amenities available. Excuse me. But there is a limit to the care that is provided there, just because the staffing ratios are different. And the model of assisted living is really based more on socialization and kind of building community than the medical model of providing, all comprehensive medical care. Excuse me. I do think it's important for me to interject that there is no extra cost to transitioning to assisted living or receiving more of the services that assisted living provides. That's part of the life care plan that you signed up for when you came to Oaknoll. Your endowment ensures that your monthly service fee, no matter what services you're getting in our licensed areas, the assisted living or the health center will always stay the same. So the whatever you're paying currently monthly would be the same in assisted living and the same in the health center. If you were to go to standalone assisted living, those monthly costs would be much higher. So when you take advantage of the different levels of care that Oaknoll has to offer, you really maximize the bang for your buck in terms of planning for your future here at Oaknoll. The other thing I want to say about assisted living is the meal plan stays the same as your independent living meal plan. You still get that monthly stipend. You can still order meals from any of the venues, so it's exactly the same. Each apartment has a kitchenette, so if you like to prepare your own meals, many assisted living residents have kind of given that up, but if that's something that's really important to you, you would be able to continue to do that in assisted living. Just a final note about the kinds of spaces that are available. We usually offer an open house 1 or 2 times a year, so if you haven't been to the actual neighborhood of assisted living, I would encourage you to come to one of those. But in general, most of the apartments are 1-bedroom apartments. You know, a living room, kitchenette area, and then a separate bedroom and bath, 2 closets, with an accompanying storage unit in a different part of assisted living for each apartment. We do have 6 2-bedroom apartments, and while we have individuals who live in those apartments, we also like to offer those to couples who would want to transition together at the same time. So those don't come up quite as often, but when they do, we usually offer those to couples first, and then if we don't get any takers, then we move on to the individuals. And then there are a few efficiency apartments with everything kind of in that L-shaped pattern like they are up in the independent living. Anything else you can think of, Jaclyn?
I don't think so. I did just want to touch back one more time on the regulation piece, only because we talk a little bit about the short stay unit. I think some residents might be nervous what would happen to them if they had a fall and for maybe a short amount of time it required 2 people to help them or their ADLs increased. That might be an opportunity for that resident if they had a hospitalization to go to our short stay unit to rehab and then make it back to that level of care. So I just like to be clear that you can fluctuate and still remain within assisted living, but I also like to be clear that those conversations also have happened very well in advance. One thing I feel like we pride ourselves a lot on in assisted living is just communication. So we'll communicate well in advance when those types of things are coming close, or if somebody has an acute event happen and need more services, either in the short stay or assisted living, those things alter and change. And as Sarah mentioned, we meet with our transition team weekly and routinely and discuss where each resident's needs would best be met. So just wanted to kind of touch on that because it seems so official sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation and a lot of oversight and supervision and back and forth about your health status. And so nothing is a surprise to anyone in assisted living in terms of when circumstances change and the kind of support that we need to put in place. I think it's also important to emphasize that if you can do something for yourself, you are going to be encouraged to do that for yourself in assisted living. We want to provide support for the things that are taking more time and more of your energy, so that you have more energy and life in you to be doing the things that are really joyful and of most interest to you. So we just want to want to reassure you that there is still a lot of independence and autonomy in assisted living. Those are by far the most successful transitions. And then lastly, I just want to say that, can't really remember what I was going to say.
I don't know. Assisted living's my favorite place to be. So the staff I don't know. The residents have a really good relationship with all of the staff, and there's a lot to do. And I feel like some people think that they move to assisted living and that's final said and done, but there's still the same opportunities, just with more help available. So
absolutely.
I just like to encourage to come down for a visit or a tour, even if it isn't time to consider it. So and come to an open house when we have them. They're fun.
Absolutely. The thing that I was going to say is some people get kind of stuck at when they think of the size of the apartments available, or the options available. And one thing that I found in my years of experience, and I think Jaclyn would agree, that the material things, while they're important and we make every apartment as comfortable and familiar and as home-like as we can for residents in assisted living, what comforts people and what brings them that sense of security and fulfillment is really the engagement with the people, the staff, and the support that they know is there. So that sort of cannot be measured in terms of a material thing or a material cost, but it really does enhance the quality of people's lives. So I would just encourage you to consider assisted living, and like Jaclyn said, come check it out sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.